All right, so they begin this chapter with what they call the perspectival approaches to defending truth. And so they say in the preceding chapters that they noted that John Frame, right, utilizes a schema of three perspectives in two somewhat desperate ways. They suggest that Frame's perspectivalism can be adopted to encompass and correlate the four approaches to apologetics. And so one way to do this is to interpret the three perspectives as describing first the immanent aspect of knowledge, and then to identify revelation as the transcendent aspect of knowledge. So those are the two broad kind of areas that they want us to consider that they kind of take from Frame and how he encompasses the four approaches to apologetics.
Yeah, yeah, and if you read anything else by Frame, you'll see that tri-perspectival aspect in a lot of his writings, including his systematic theology and even some of his articles. He'll bring that into Frame. To hit my joke a second time because it was so good. All right, so what are kind of the two forks here, the two keys that they're bringing it to the immanent and the transcendent aspects of knowledge? Well, for immanent, there's the things of logic, facts, or evidence, and faith are the basis of three related perspectives on the way we receive God's truth, the way that we bring it in. And the transcendent aspect of knowledge is God's logos, his word, God's acts, and God's spirit are the basis of the three related perspectives on the way God reveals his truth to us. So for the immanent, it's how we receive, and transcendent is how God reveals. And so already you're starting to see probably the different aspects that they're pulling from, which kind of road they travel here. And so that's what we'll be talking about more so about that as we go on through this chapter.
Right. And so they kind of explain this, and they say, first of all, a perspective is, as in Frame's way, a way of viewing the whole. So perspectives are looking at the whole thing, not just a slice of it, right? So, for example, they tell us that the work of God's Spirit and illumination causes us to think differently, right? That's logic. To see the facts differently, that's evidence. And to respond to God differently, that's faith. So we have those three, perspectival views there caught up, but it's a holistic kind of approach with regard to illumination. Illumination affects how we think, how we see the facts, and how we respond to God. So it's a whole holistic way of looking at it.
Mm-hmm. And we've discussed this when we've talked about the other three aspects, including the classical. The classical doesn't kind of poo-poo the transcendent that the Reform perspective kind of may make it out to be. They do try to bring that in. We talked about how William Lane Craig tends to say how he shows versus how he knows. Those are two different argumentations that he would give. But also, when you have the presuppositional aspect, you don't just have only the fact that God is transcendent, the way that he acts, the way that he's known, the way that we exist in the world, the way that we are able to operate. That brings into the things of logic and evidence that this integrative approach is trying to I think highlight more here. All right, well, and then second, while all these perspectives are involved in knowledge, certain of them are inevitably primary and specific experiences of knowing. Apologists need to identify which perspective is primary in any specific discussion and an individual and addresses the question at hand from that perspective. So it depends on maybe who your audience is, or maybe in your own mind, you're setting yourself up, or maybe you're starting further down the keyhole than you want to. And so you want to understand exactly where you can back up to if that is the nature of the questions that are given to you. So think about being asked, well, why do you hold that? And so you might need to take a step back and say, I need to know a primary assumption, even though maybe the question that I'm involved with a friend is something that's more of a down the road one. So
right. And so what they're really getting at here is looking at, they expect you to evaluate the situation and then deal with it based on how the situation kind of works its way out. Correct. So, for instance, they give us an example. They said in talking with a non-Christian about the problem of evil, let's say, the Christian may find that the non-Christian's difficulty centers on the loss of a loved one and the subsequent difficulty in believing that God loves them. Right. So notice in this situation, the apologist should address the issue primarily as a matter of gaining confidence in God as a person who loves him and not as a logical difficulty to be solved. Right. So here's a person that's struggling because of a loss of a loved one. And they're suggesting, well, from this situational standpoint, you don't jump into a logical, kind of argument about the problem of evil. No, you deal with this in terms of how God loves that person, right?
Right. We may think of Job and his friends. They did good for a while, and then they got sick of waiting for him to get out of his funk of losing pretty much everything, and so they were trying to help by appealing to. Trying to get him to think, well, maybe you're a sinner and you brought this on yourself, right?
Yeah, thanks. Right. Yeah. That's really helpful there. Yeah.
It may be well to think about that in the grand scheme of all discussions possible, but maybe we just need to understand our audience and setting in that case.
Yeah. And so they note here, by the way, and this is kind of interesting, that here apologists of any approach may find that the feedest way of handling the question may be the most effective, right? Where we see God as a person who loves us and wants a relationship with us, and then go from there. So,
yeah. Sometimes you root for the little dog, and sometimes he grabs a part of the wheel, and you're really just proud. He won't be able to hold on to it, but good job, fetus. Thanks for helping us out. Well, then on the other hand, though, some non-Christians are very troubled by the logical conundrum, but not by any specific experience of their own. In that case, the apologist should be sure to address the issue primary, at least at first, as a matter of showing the non-Christian that the reality of evil does not disprove God's existence. So, for more on that, we've actually discussed that quite a bit. And so, Scott Christensen's "What About Evil" is something that I regularly go back to and have opened up within the past month still and pulled different examples or argumentations from it to think about and write about. So. We've done that in the past, and so you can check that video out on caveofthecross.com. Well, here, Plantinga's free will defense, Geisler's greater good defense, or some similar philosophical arguments may be most effective. That's the ones that our authors bring as things to consider, and our What About Evil book has discussed some of those as well. No one approach is guaranteed to be a success or most effective starting point in an apologetic context. The generalization follows from the point just made. Some perspectives are primary in one situation and not in others. And also, I think what we need to talk about too is how an argument motivates somebody to believe or to take into effect. You might be talking to someone who has no clue what even transcendent means, and breaking it down for them doesn't hit them with the same impact that going through kind of a Bible study more directly of experience would happen. And so that's something where knowing your audience as well here and saying let's take it as a individualistic area as the fetus would attempt to do probably the best.
Right. And so the bottom line here, as you said, some perspectives are primary in, one situation, and others may be primary in another situation. Mm-hmm. So you got to get a feel for the situation, and that'll help you with regard to your approach, right? That's really what they're getting at.
Right.